What does a DAC do for you? Do you know?
Nope. Welcome to iFi. I'm Marcos, this is Kurt, and today we're having a look at the iFi iDSD Neo DAC. The iFi iDSD Neo retails for $11.49 Canadian, around 900 USD. The cool part about the iFi iDSD Neo is the fact that it's not only just a DAC, it's a Bluetooth streamer and also a headphone amp. It features optical, coax, and USB inputs. For outputs, it features XLR balanced, RCAs, 4.4mm balance for headphones, and also a 1/4 inch headphone jack. And lastly, a really great feature about it, it does feature high-res aptX 5.1 Bluetooth tech. All of this tech makes the iFi iDSD Neo quite a well-rounded DAC.
The build quality on this is actually quite good considering its price range. It's all, there's not a bunch of plastic bits all over it. One thing I would say is the screen. A lot of times if you're between 10 to 15 feet away, it doesn't become as much in use. So when it comes to looking at for the source inputs, it would actually be nice if they would just label it. Instead, they put a picture. It shows like a picture of because it looks like a nipple. It does. They're trying to make it look like an RCA, so you see a circle and you see a hole in there.
A few moments later.
Having a look at the inputs with your imaginative thinking, here we've got the coaxial input, the square input / USB, then we've got Bluetooth, and then now this one is a square input with a dot, which means optical. Back to the nipple. Coaxial.
Right. I always like it when the buttons have a nice click feel to it. Also too, is on this volume control. I would say it's pretty good. You can see there's a little bit of play, but one thing I do like about it is you can really feel that click as you're going up and down the volume.
Overall, I quite like the looks of the iFi iDSD Neo. I think it's a nice modern look. It looks really good on a desktop or kind of hidden away in a big 2-channel system. The other cool part, right now you're looking at it in portrait mode, but it also has the landscape mode where the screen changes orientation, so you can lay it down or stand it up.
Like a phone.
When it comes to setting up the iFi iDSD Neo, depending on your setup, it's actually pretty straightforward. So starting off with the Bluetooth setup, you will want to attach the Bluetooth antenna that we have here. And if you select on the Bluetooth input, it will automatically go into discovery mode and you can simply connect your phone or computer to it. It's nice and easy. And the nice part is the device does not forget the connection. So anytime this is on, your device will connect to it automatically. When it comes to using the USB input, you'll want to make sure to select on your computer that this is the audio output, because you want your computer to send all of its data to the DAC. Another thing to note is if you're using Tidal and you want to take advantage of its MQA decoding, you do have to select that you're using an MQA external DAC under the Tidal settings. When using either the coax or optical modes, quite simple, just plug in the cable, the DAC knows what to do.
We're going to do this a little bit different than other reviews. We were talking about earlier, one of the biggest questions, like, what does a DAC really do for you? And we had to set a point of reference, and that will be comparing it to the Node, which is already a really good DAC streamer combination. This will add little things, and like I said, it's really quite subtle, but things are like, for example, like things just sound that little bit more three-dimensional. The texturing, it's definitely going to pick up a lot more. One thing you'll notice is on the overall presence of the stage, because you're extracting a lot more detail it also seems like you're getting a sense of more air and width into the soundstage.
The bass response seemed to be a lot better than the Node. It seemed to be a little bit more articulated as well. And on the top end is the small details, like mentioned. It has a little bit more air on the top. The small details seem to be a little bit more present and a little bit more in the room. You may remember that video that we shot on the Chord Mojo. This iFi iDSD is almost a similar price point. The one thing I do like quite a bit about it, more than the Mojo, is just the fact that it's more of a dedicated desktop or 2-channel DAC. So you can use it with many more inputs. The connections are quite a bit easier. And if you're a big fan of balanced connections, either for 2-channel or for headphone, this one does it all. For our headphone listeners out there, we'll be making a headphone review with the iFi iDSD Neo, just to really sort it out and see what it does well on headphones as well. When it came down to listening to the iFi iDSD Neo, we listened to it at low volume and high volume as always. At low volume, around 60 dBs, pretty quiet conversation level, I did appreciate that a little bit better bass response and a little bit more clarity on the top end. Just things seem to be a little bit more present to me.
And at higher volumes, it really does help because it seems to kind of round things off a little bit more. It's a little bit more easier listening to. So when you turn it up, it does help kind of improve where you don't get as much listener fatigue.
When we listen to the iFi DSD Neo, we listen to a pretty wide variety of music just to see, kind of shake it down and see what it could do. The 2 tracks that we found that really stood out today. The first one is Magnus Ostrom. I really love this album. It's an ACT recording, so the recording quality is absolutely stellar. The name of the song is quite long. It's Mary Jane Doesn't Live Here Anymore. And it kind of has this dark and gloomy vibe to it, I find. And I found with the iDSD Neo, it just made that piano sound a little bit more lively and up close and personal. The stage sounded really small to me, and it just had this really kind of gloomy vibe to it.
You tell when they were kind of engineering and mixing this, it just like what you said, it was in that small intimate space. And when we were going back and forth between the Node and this DAC, you can kind of hear the room more. Creates more of that kind of intimacy, what they're trying to create. Because in this, really what happens is you got the piano and you got the percussion, and it's almost like you're just, the way it's recorded is just you're sitting down and you're listening to it. It's almost like a small private performance for a very small group of people.
The second song, we really mixed it up with the genres, and we went for an old alternative rock song, Evanescence, Going Under. For some of you, it might not sound like it's that old, but believe it or not, it's almost 20 years old, this song now. One thing that's really prevalent in this song is the distortion of the strings, for sure. And I found when listening to it on the iFi iDSD Neo, it just made it a little bit less sharp sounding, which I really enjoyed because I found it was a lot more listenable. The song itself, you could really get into the lyrics, you could enjoy her voice quite a bit more, so I thought it did a great job.
So when I was listening to this track, especially when we switch, you really notice how it does it. It cleans up kind of that distortion, adds, and the thing is because it's adding like just better texturing. Even very subtle, it adds to it, creating more of just a 3-dimensional sound. One thing I also noticed is a little details. Like, so for example, I can hear more when she's pulling away from the microphone. You're able to pick up little cues like that. It kind of livens things up. It feels a little bit more live and that slightly more organic type of sound. So what you may notice is just that extra little bit of dimensionality that it brings to the music. If you're the type of person that just really wants to just increase the sound quality a little bit, then it really is for you. If you already own a Node, which is already a really good unit, you know, this is a way just to bring it up another level. And always remember, people sometimes, when it comes to DAC, they always say, I can't really hear a difference. And the thing is, remember, these differences are subtle. But if you take the time and take either an in-home edition yourself, and you did like what we did, and we just put it back and forth on 2 different inputs, remember, don't look for clarity, look for what the overall impression it gives you, and you'll be surprised what you might hear.
If you're the kind of listener who really likes to pick things apart and analyze every note of that recording, the iDSD Neo I don't think would be the right DAC for yourself. It's well-rounded, but it's not the most analytical or detailed DAC there is. If you're the kind of listener who also loves to play around with DSP functions and kind of EQ gear to your preference, unfortunately the iFi iDSD does not have any DSP functions, so it's always tuned flat, as I guess a true classic DAC would be. Thanks for watching our video today, and we'll see you in the next one.